6-point game. Things tightening up here in the third. Mitchell floats it, and it's intercepted by Westbeld.
October 14th, and here we go again. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to TFD, and man, it feels like every time we think things might cool off around Caitlin Clark, something else drops that keeps her name buzzing. So buckle up, because we're taking this all the way to Indianapolis today, and I'm telling you right now, this one's worth sticking around for. Here's the deal. Nothing over the top crazy, but a fresh update worth talking about. Caitlin Clark is about to appear on Sue Bird's show tomorrow. Yes, Sue Bird, the 4-time WNBA champion, the legend, the icon, the face of leadership and experience in women's basketball. And just minutes ago, a short teaser clip dropped that had fans instantly rewinding, replaying, and dissecting every second. Because here's the thing, Clark hasn't exactly been running the talk show circuit during the season. In the off-season, it was a whole different story. She was everywhere, speaking engagements, signing autographs, doing meet and greets, appearances at charity events, even popping up at unexpected public functions where people swarmed her for selfies. But during the grind of the regular season, those long sit-down interviews, not so much. That's why the fact she's teaming up with Sue Bird now says a lot, because it's not just a media hit. It's a meeting between two different eras of the game, two players with very different styles, but perhaps similar mental toughness. And while we can't say for sure what their relationship is off camera, it looks solid from this angle, and that's worth noting because Clark's every move right now gets magnified. So, here we have Caitlin pulling up on Bird's Eye View with Sue Bird. The show's telling everyone tune in tomorrow. The promo is clean, the logo's front and center. The microphones are lit perfectly, and Clark herself went ahead and shared the teaser clip earlier today on her socials, which we just have to break down. Sue Bird asking her, "You have faced massive praise, you have faced harsh criticism. How do you approach building your own confidence and really just staying true to that?" And that's a sharp question, because it cuts straight to the heart of what's been brewing around Caitlin all season. The non-stop back and forth between those who champion her as the future of the sport and those who question her every step. And speaking of that bigger conversation, Stephen A. Smith just took it up a notch, delivering what might be one of the most pointed warnings we've heard yet about how far this Caitlin Clark situation could go. And if you thought his earlier takes were strong, this one was a whole other level. He's making it clear, this isn't just sports talk anymore. It's catching the eye of political circles, saying straight up that certain people in the administration are aware of what's happening, that he's not guessing or speculating. He's got people telling him not to be surprised if former President Donald Trump speaks out on it eventually. And if Trump decides to throw his weight into the conversation, framing Clark as someone being unfairly treated, it could ignite a storm that pulls the WNBA into a political crossfire it probably doesn't want. Stephen A. is not saying he supports that outcome, but he's warning everyone from league officials to players to executives that ignoring these currents is dangerous. Because if a political base latches onto the idea of Clark as a symbol of victimhood, it will become a problem the league can't ignore. And that's coming from someone who's repeatedly said he supports the WNBA and wants it to succeed, wants these players to get their money, their recognition, and their respect. He's making the point that timing matters too, bringing up that Wall Street Journal article that dropped just a couple of weeks after certain players wore those protest t-shirts, and how that timing is suspicious with collective bargaining negotiations on the horizon, suggesting that stories don't just randomly appear in moments like that if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck. It's not a mongoose. And here's where it gets even heavier. PECAUSE. Stephen A. connects the dots between the league's internal politics, the media narratives, and how external political forces can weaponize them for their own agendas, warning that the WNBA can't afford to be reactive after the fact. They need to be ahead of the narrative, especially when a player like Caitlin Clark, already a polarizing lightning rod, becomes the centerpiece of discussions that go way beyond basketball. Because at that point, it's not just about points and assists, it's about image, power, leverage, and public perception. So, tomorrow's Sue Bird interview isn't just another athlete Q&A, it's a moment where Clark has a platform to show how she's processing all of this in real time. A chance for fans, critics, and maybe even political observers to hear from her directly in a setting where she can speak on her own terms. And that alone makes it one of the most intriguing appearances of her season so far, because no matter what side people are on, they'll be watching, and the ripple effects from what she says or doesn't say could stretch way beyond the court.
Did she get it off in time?
Well, right now it's a 1-point win for Indiana. They counted it on the floor. They'll go and check.
October 14th. And you've got to pay close attention right now because the tea leaves are practically shaking in the wind. And if you know how to read them, you can already see the ripple effect coming. This isn't just small talk anymore. It's turning into a storyline that could explode far beyond the hardwood. And I told y'all before, the political wave was creeping toward this Caitlin Clark situation. Well, here we are, right at the shoreline, with the tide pulling in faster than anyone expected. I said it this morning, and I'll say it again, there's a very real possibility that former President Donald Trump might step in and put his own spotlight on this. And if that happens, it won't just be a WNBA talking point. It'll be a national headline, a 24/7 news cycle kind of deal, the type that cable networks, late-night hosts, and international outlets will chew on for weeks. Because like it or not, the moment politics intersects with sports, especially with a player as polarizing and high-profile as Caitlin Clark, the reach multiplies exponentially. And listen, I'm not the kind of guy to keep beating the same drum unless the beat matters. But this right here is starting to feel spooky in the way big stories always do right before they blow wide open. The WNBA is about to find itself in the hottest seat it has ever been in. And if they think tossing a few green machines into the arena, making a couple of soft PR moves, or trying to quietly tweak things behind the scenes is going to make this go away, they're wrong because, if this catches full fire, nothing's putting it out quickly. And it's not going to stay confined to ESPN panels or niche sports blogs. No, this is the kind of thing that crosses borders, pops up on BBC World News, gets op-eds in the New York Times and The Guardian, maybe even finds its way into parliamentary questions in other countries where people debate sports and politics with the same intensity as local elections. And in the center of all this potential chaos is Caitlin Clark, a player who could very well flip this entire narrative on its head depending on how things unfold. And here's the kicker behind the scenes. The person allegedly driving this storyline forward isn't just some anonymous PR intern or a board fan page. It's said to be Erin Kane, her agent, working the phones, feeding the press, making sure this conversation doesn't fizzle out, pushing every possible button to keep the topic hot in the public arena. And you have to ask yourself, why? Well, the whispers say there's one huge reason Clark's been injured twice now. And while she's still a draw, those injuries have caused her stock, both in terms of on-court dominance and overall market momentum, to take a bit of a dip. In sports, perception matters as much as performance. And when your star client is suddenly sidelined, the narrative can spin away from you fast. So instead of letting people talk about what the Fever are doing without her or how they look when she's not playing, Kane might be flipping the script, framing the story as something bigger than basketball. Something that positions Clark not just as a great player but as a symbol in a larger, more emotionally charged conversation. And meanwhile, the noise around her absence hasn't died down. Fans online argue whether the team has the same spark without her. Analysts dissect how her presence changes the spacing on the floor, and all of that plays right into this growing storm. Now, enter Stephen A. Smith, the man who doesn't shy away from turning up the volume on a discussion. And today, he basically spelled it out for everyone in bold capital letters. They don't fix the whistle. Meaning, if they don't start calling the game in a way that feels fair toward Clark, then all hell is about to break loose. And here's the twist. He also says, if they do nothing, if they ease up on Clark and it still looks like she's being targeted in other ways, all hell's still going to break loose. In other words, there's no easy out here, because the perception game is already running on its own engine. And Stephen A. is out here making sure people understand the stakes. He's not mincing words. He's not sugarcoating it. He's telling players, league officials, and even casual fans that they need to read between the lines. Watch the tea leaves and understand the ripple effect this could have if mishandled. And he's right, because if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's sure as hell not a mongoose. Which is his way of saying don't get distracted by the noise. Pay attention to the patterns, because those patterns are where the truth hides. So yeah, that was Stephen A. Smith on First Take this morning, and whether you agree with him or not, you have to admit it was a fascinating segment. One of those moments where sports talk feels more like a high-stakes political debate, and this situation is only getting bigger from here. I wanted to drop that into the video real quick because it frames everything else we're about to talk about. And speaking of Caitlin Clark, here's the softer side of her current story. She's going to be on Bird's Eye View tomorrow with Sue Bird, which is notable because we haven't seen much of her lately outside of her sideline appearances. The Fever did celebrate Sydney Colson's birthday yesterday, singing for her in what was easily one of the most wholesome team moments of the season. The kind of chemistry building thing fans love to see. But other than that, Clark's been relatively low-key in public settings. And that makes tomorrow's sit-down with Bird even more intriguing to basketball minds from different generations sharing the same space. And the world finally getting to hear from Clark in her own words. After weeks of speculation, and while all that's brewing, here's a little side note for the die-hard WNBA followers. The trade deadline just passed. The Fever didn't make a single move, and honestly, I think that's the right call. When you've won 5 straight, why mess with the formula? Especially when you know the roster is about to get healthy again. But any momentum they were riding hit a major pothole today after a flat-out ugly loss to the Phoenix Mercury. 95-60, the kind of game that makes you scratch your head and wonder what went wrong from the opening tip. And while that was going on, we caught this clip from the game that's worth sharing, not because it was a highlight in the traditional sense, but because it showed the mix of banter, energy, and offbeat moments that make the WNBA fun to follow. You had a little exchange about looking at the wrong person, someone joking about the free throw routine, some applause breaking out in between, and a moment where you could hear my girl shouted out in the middle of the chaos, followed by someone explaining they were just 2 cowgirls on their last West Coast trip, trading love and laughs before getting back to the grind. It was a reminder that for all the political heat and media storms swirling around, at the core of this league are real human connections, personalities, and moments of levity, even in the middle of serious competition. And maybe that's the real reason why this Caitlin Clark story hits so hard for so many people, because she's not just an athlete in a vacuum. She's part of a league trying to balance business, image, and growth with the reality of its players' lives. And right now, all of that is about to collide on a stage that's bigger than anything the WNBA has dealt with before. And when that collision happens, you can bet it's going to be loud, messy, and impossible to ignore.